5-minute rounds for questions. I'm going to start with Professor Bray. One criticism has been leveled against the legislative solution that I've proposed. It's been that it undermines the judicial branch's checks and balances on the executive branch. Do you think this is a fair criticism, and how would you respond?
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I don't think it's a fair criticism. I understand where it's coming from because the place of the courts as a check and balance on the executive branch and the legislative branch is very important in our constitutional system. But the way courts do that is by deciding according to the law in particular cases. And then that ripples out to other cases through precedent. That's the way they serve as a check, without fear or favor, following the law in the case. But they serve as a check, as courts do, by deciding cases, by giving remedies to the parties in the case.
Mr. Panuccio, you have direct experience in the Justice Department dealing with non-party relief ordered by district judges. From your perspective, how significant is the problem of universal injunctions to the relationship between the executive and judicial branch?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a great question. I think it's a very significant problem, and I think it is years of this practice are eroding the relationship between the Department of Justice and the executive branch and the courts, and I think that's happening across administrations. What effectively happens when a nationwide injunction is entered is that every single case, every single policy of the executive branch becomes an emergency that needs to move up the appellate ladder very quickly. And Supreme Court justices appointed by presidents of both parties have noted that the increase in the emergency docket is straining the court, it is straining its resources, and it is also reducing the quality of decision making. And so you are seeing increased friction. And even in these district courts that issue nationwide injunctions, I think you're seeing very unfortunate comments made by some of the judges. There is a real tension between the jurists and the lawyers, and it is undermining the typical relationship between the department and the courts.
Professor Bray, you touched on this a little bit in your opening comments. As administrations come and go, the problem of universal injunctions often appear partisan. You've been calling attention to this problem since the Obama administration and have maintained a consistent position across 4 administrations now. From your perspective, is the problem of universal injunctions a partisan one, and then what's the solution?
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I do not believe it is a partisan problem, because it is a problem that has been hamstringing every administration since 2015. The end of the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now the second Trump administration. So if you look at it over time, it's not a partisan problem. At any particular moment, undeniably, it is a partisan problem and has a partisan valence. But legislation should not just be about the moment. Legislation should be about the long view. And I think the only fair way to do this is to knock out the weapon of the universal injunction for everyone. Take it away from Democrats, take it away from Republicans, because what it really strikes at is our ability to have democratic self-government and effective government action by the federal government.
Mr. Panuccio, in your written testimony, you said that it's important to pass legislation to make temporary restraining orders against the government appealable. The legislation I proposed does that. Can you expand a bit more on your views here? What are temporary restraining orders, and why is it important that they be, that they're appealable?
Thank you, Chairman. It's an important question because the latest trend in non-party relief appears to be courts entering what's called a temporary restraining order instead of a preliminary injunction. Now, in my experience as a litigator in my years as a lawyer, a TRO was supposed to be a very short-term order from the court when it is impossible for the court to hold a hearing with both parties, and it might enter, for example, a 24-hour TRO until it can get a hearing on a preliminary injunction, an actual hearing with adversaries arguing the facts and the law to the court. But what we're now seeing is the courts are entering these TROs, which can, under the rules, last for up to 2 weeks and then be extended for another 2 weeks. And the issue is that the courts have interpreted TROs to not be appealable. Now, that may be a dubious interpretation, but that is the law of the land right now. And so it is effectively allowing district judges to insulate themselves from review. So it's bad enough that we have district judges saying, I am a ruler for the entire nation. But now they're saying, they're not elected, so the people can't have a say. They're also saying that the appellate judges who are supposed to oversee my decisions, I don't want them hearing it either. So let me enter a TRO instead of a preliminary injunction or some other immediately appealable order. So I do think it is a virtue of your bill, Chairman, that TROs or any other similar order would be immediately appealable.
Yeah. Senator Durbin, I've asked Senator Moody to take over for me while I go to another meeting. So
She's very strict. Yeah.
you proceed. Yeah. Thank you, Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Professor